Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to what should be the Joe and Joe Weather Show, except Joe's not here yet. So, uh, don't know if he's having any problems. I haven't heard from him, but as soon as he's ready, he'll probably pop in. Okay, so I'm going to start the night we'll talk about tonight's severe weather. We've got Cristobal, which is stuck in Mexico for the time being. And it's probably going to take another day and a half before it moves northward and drifts out into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Looks like the threat is for the Louisiana coast sometime later on Sunday. And I really think the big issue here is going to be rain more than anything else. Even if this were to develop into a moderately strong tropical storm, maybe it gets to 55 or 60, maybe 70 miles an hour. I really don't think it's going to be able to get beyond that, at least from what I'm seeing right now. There's a bit too much shear, not so much when it's moving northward in the south central Gulf, but as it approaches the Gulf Coast, it looks like the shear becomes a bit more significant, and it's embedded in this upper low and this gyre we've been describing, and that probably kind of puts a lid on how strong it can get. It's going to have to move out over the waters, consolidate a bit because the center is, while intact, is still pretty broad. Severe weather tonight is not quite as robust as yesterday's, with that first area that moved through Pennsylvania and New Jersey that was declared a derecho. And then we had a second area that came in last night. I got into some of that, and Rayo is here, so let's let him into the room. And I've already done the intros, Joe. So we're just talking about. I was just talking about last night. Yesterday with the derecho that moved through Pennsylvania and New Jersey in the early afternoon, which is what it was declared. And then last night, those storms actually held together quite well. Goodman was on target, and we got into some fairly got into a fairly decent lightning display show for a bit with some thunder and some heavy rains. I was on the eastern end of it. I think it was a bit worse as you went out to the west.
And now we have more. First of all, let me apologize for being a little late
You
tonight.
should apologize, for God's sake. 7 o'clock is the show time, you know.
I understand. I understand.
Yes. And
Due to
Robert,
circumstances beyond my control, unfortunately, caused me to be tardy tonight. So
oh, I
I
hope everything's all right.
yeah, everything is for the moment. Everything is fine.
Okay,
Um,
that's
we
good.
are possibly looking at another meteorological pyrotechnics display in parts of our area later tonight. It would appear.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the cells are going to hold together like they did last night. Uh, the NAM3 seems to be bullish on holding the cells together. The HRRR a bit less so, but they are impressive on the radar. And I don't have any marine layer issues, and I'm not seeing any marine layer issues. So perhaps they will hold together. Robert Russo hit super chat tonight. Thanks so much for doing that. And I'm bringing up we've got almost the whole state of Pennsylvania right now is under a severe thunderstorm watch, except for the extreme eastern part, at least for now. And there's two areas of thunderstorms. There's one that's in central PA moving east, and then there's another that is behind it. The one behind it is not going to survive, I don't think. It's the cells that are ahead of it that probably will wind up getting to us. Oops, didn't want to do that. Why is it stuck?
Watching Joe, I'm watching right now. You don't have access to it, but I have access to the RPM, the 21Z RPM,
Right.
and if the RPM is correct, then the immediate New York area will be in the throes of not a super duper thunderstorm, but some heavy rain and possible thunder around 2 in the morning, and then there's another round that comes on in around 7:30 tomorrow morning, and then that exits out, and then we have just spotty showers and rather humid conditions for tomorrow, and then yet another round of potential. Well, wait a minute now. Why did that jump? Did that jump or
Yeah, I'm having some.
Oh, I see what happened. The 21Z is only out to about 23 hours. That's why it just suddenly stopped when it got to about this time tomorrow night. But it looks like we'll be seeing some bouts of showery and thundery conditions here, at least for the next 24 hours. And then I want your opinion about Saturday now. From my viewpoint, I think most of what is going to be happening tonight, tomorrow, and into tomorrow evening will be
Mhm.
pretty well done by daybreak Saturday. But the upper level disturbance associated with the cold front will
Right.
still be in our vicinity during the day on Saturday. It still will be relatively humid, dew point temperatures above 60. And I think we could see possibly in one or two spots, maybe more, some pop up shower and thunderstorm activity toward the end of Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, we put it in, we take it out, we put it back in, we take it out. Now we just put it back in. Yeah, I did mention it. I did notice that the dry line takes a little longer to get here, as we speculated the last couple of days on how the GFS just loves to bring fronts through at noon time, and they more often than not don't get here until late afternoon or evening. And this is every once in a while it gets it right, but this again, the dry line coming in later. Yeah, there probably will be a couple of pop-ups with that upper trough. And I think they'll be scattered in nature. I'm not anticipating any kind of squall line going by. Heaven forbid. Of course, it could be famous last words now
Oh,
that I mentioned it.
a lot of is going to depend upon, again, how much sun we may have. What I would call and this is for Saturday now, what I would call the proverbial sunshine sandwich, which Saturday starts out kind of gray and gloomy. Then all of a sudden, by mid-morning, out comes the sun. The sun comes out. The temperatures climb into the low 80s and mid 80s. The air heats up. There's still instability aloft, and then
Mm,
all of a sudden, popping every which
kaboom.
way are the showers and boomers. But again, nothing organized, no squall line, but just enough so that some places may get rained on before the end of the day Saturday. And then it looks like Saturday night, finally, as the upper disturbance moves away, we swing into a northwesterly flow aloft and both at the surface and aloft, probably in the late night hours of Saturday. And come Sunday, it should be glorious with sunshine, some puffy fair weather clouds, much lower humidity, and Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday, very, very nice weather.
Yeah, we're pretty much on the same page with that. I thought we'd probably be dry through Wednesday. Let me just give a radar refresh on the U.S. view, and you can see the storms tonight. The cells looks like some cells not too moving through Allentown or getting very close to Allentown, extending southwestward. Some other cells right along the PA Maryland border. And the second area back in western Pennsylvania, that is the second severe thunderstorm watch that is up. And
And
you're Go ahead.
yeah, interestingly, I pulled up the 18Z RPM, and we just said it's just going to be random pop-ups. But the 18Z RPM, from looking at this would be I'm looking at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, shows a broken line of showers and storms extending from central Maine down through east central Massachusetts, across the tri-state area, and down the Jersey coast into northeastern
Well,
Virginia.
that RPM is a compilation of all the short range models, and a lot of them the ones we don't usually bring up, like the WRF and one of the other ones. I forgot what's the acronym for that. But we could pull it up. Maybe we could figure out. You've seen it, so you can take a look and see which one when we get to Saturday. Let's get
Yeah.
tonight done here,
Okay.
and I'm gonna pop up one of the local radars. So we'll go to. I'm going to bring up weather.gov. By the way, just to show you, we've got severe thunderstorm watch in Pennsylvania. We've got another severe thunderstorm watch in parts of western South Dakota. Another watch up in Texas, northwest Texas into western Oklahoma. Flash flood watches southeast Louisiana and the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and we're probably going to see this area get expanded as we move into the weekend. The dark red you see out in the coastal waters, those are tropical storm warnings that are up preemptively for when Cristobal comes out of out of the Yucatan and moves into the south central Gulf sometime Friday night or Saturday. And we have flash flood watches up for central and southern Florida because it's been raining there now for about 3 days, and there's still more rain to go. The Southwest, excessive heat in Arizona, Southern California, red flag warnings up to the north in northern Arizona, Utah, and parts of Nevada. And we also have heat advisories up for the interior of central California. And the rest of the country is just having ordinary early June weather, if you'd like to call it. So let's. By the way, the Upton radar remains down. They were fixing it today. I don't know how.
It's going to be out for 2 weeks.
Is it going to be out? Lovely.
They said for the next 2 weeks it will be out of commission. They're putting it on a new mounting post, I guess you can call it, or whatever. And the whole procedure takes a couple of weeks for them to do that. So
all right. So in the meantime, we have Mount Holly, and the Mount Holly radar. There are a number of working. Looks like we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 severe thunderstorm warnings that are up. There's a flash flood warning up as well between just northeast of Harrisburg. Looks like along I-81 and I-78, and even into parts of I-76 getting into that. Down in York, PA, seeing a severe thunderstorm warning there. Looks like a severe thunderstorm warning just outside of Allentown. I'm going to go to the west. Let's go to State College radar, and you can see it from the other end. From DuBois down to Altoona, Joe, there's a really nasty-looking band there. It looks like a little Boeing going on with that moving on to the east. And you can see the back edge of some of the cells that we just showed you over on the Mount Holly radar. And the precip that's in western PA, the showers and storms from in western PA down into West Virginia. I'm going to go shift southward. There are some cells down on the Blacksburg, Virginia radar. We're seeing some big thunderstorms around Charleston, near Bluefield, on points south and west from there. A little flash flood warning up there on the North Carolina state line. These are all moving up to the northeast. And just south of Charleston, it looks like a pretty hefty looking cell there that is moving on up to the northeast. I think I'll see if I can get the regional. Look at the regional radar up here. And this kind of shows, all those radars basically put together, so you can see the coverage is real. Pennsylvania and into western Maryland. Those areas seem to be getting hit the hardest, and it's these cells here that you see. It's this stuff that's probably going to try to survive. My arrow is not exactly. I'm not drawing it straight. Let's try it this way. Come on. Oh, Mr. Rayo, sometimes technology. There we go. It's those cells that are going to move northeast, and as you said, probably between, say, 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. from west to east in terms of, we'll see how they hold together.
Right. And this box that, excuse me, the thunderstorm box or the thunderstorm watch area off to the west of us expires at 10 o'clock. So one wonders if these storms are still in any real condition of significance, whether or not they might extend the box or the area of the watch further east into our area. When I say the box, I'm thinking back in the old days when you and I used to.
Right, we would call it the box. Now it's this, amorphous mess. They used to draw the severe thunderstorm watches. Actually, it wasn't really a box; it was a parallelogram.
Parallelogram.
Right, but you didn't say they just put out a parallelogram. You would say they just put out a box, and you knew. I'm just looking at their mesoscale discussions, and by the way, I don't know. The other day, one of the severe thunderstorm watches for some reason did not show up on the SBC website. It showed up on Twitter and everywhere else, but for some reason it didn't show up in the mesoscale discussion. And I'm seeing that one of the severe thunderstorm watches is actually missing. So the watch box that's up right now, I don't even see. There's severe thunderstorm watch 251. 252 in the Dakotas, and that's it. They issued a mesoscale discussion for the one in Pennsylvania. Severe thunderstorm watch 250, and in their discussion, they said that latest radar suggests a weak MCV. Well, we're not doing now. We're doing that again. A mesoscale convective vortex. Okay, has developed over just Jefferson County, PA. The feature is shifting east and may enhance ongoing scattered convection downstream across central into eastern PA. Leading edge of this activity has shifted east of the watch into Berks County and will likely propagate another county or two before weakening. Air mass over coastal mid-Atlantic is considerably less buoyant, and visible satellite imagery supports this with very few boundary layer cumulus. So that's their opinion. They're basically saying that these cells will probably they'll last for another couple of hours and then they'll start to wane a little bit.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean they're right, but it's their never to be humble opinion.
MCV, MC. You and I grew up with MCC, mesoscale convective complex. Then they changed it to mesoscale convective system, MCS, and now we have MCV.
Right, and I kept calling it an MCC, which is a mesoscale convective cluster.
Right.
Which I think I saw there was a definition for that too. There's too many acronyms. And you know what's frustrating? What's frustrating is I will run into acronyms. I have no idea what they mean. None.
Right.
None. Thank God for Google. Or either that or I'll find some 16-year-old, a 16-year-old weather freak and ask them because they'll know everything off their brains are like sponges. They'll come up with it just like that.
You know that the word news is an acronym, right?
And it means?
North, east, west, south, the four corners of the globe.
Oh, I never knew that.
News.
Or maybe I did know it and I just forgot it completely. It wasn't one of the...
For the bottom line, folks, is this. From now till about maybe late Saturday, we're in line for some shower activity, maybe a few pops of thunder and lightning. Humidity levels are going to be coming back up again. Really wasn't all that bad out there today, humidity-wise. And tonight, tomorrow, and into even Saturday. And then if you really want nice weather, you'll just have to wait until Saturday night, Sunday. And early next week. So
all right, here's your risk areas for tonight, which they just refreshed. I don't know why the site refreshes like every 5 minutes. Slight risk, southern PA, a small corner of southwest Jersey, Maryland, northeast Virginia, northern West Virginia. Marginal risk, every big area of marginal risk today. Slight risk from Iowa northwestward into South Dakota with an area of enhanced risk tonight in South Dakota, and also slight risk in northern Texas, northwest Texas, and western Oklahoma. And of course, the two other areas showing a slight to enhanced. We have those two working severe thunderstorm watches going on in those areas. Just want to show you, at least for tomorrow, they have a small area of marginal risk, about in the same zone where they had it yesterday and today. But it's a small area. Maybe it'll get a little bigger tomorrow and tomorrow morning when they take a look at the overnight models. But northeast Virginia, southeast and south central PA, and touching southwest Jersey. Also marginal risk back through Missouri and East Kansas, a small portion of all of eastern Wyoming, and on up into northwestern Montana and northern Idaho. And then, of course, on Sunday, when it's not even an issue for us, we're going to be in good shape. But we've got slight to enhanced risk up in the Dakotas, in the northern plains, and this is going to be a problem because it shows up also for day 4 and 5 up there. So SPC is kind of taking that seriously with regards to severe weather because it shows up in the day 4 and 5 time frame.
Yes, sir. I was able to find. I know Scott Briller, who's not here tonight. He is delivering COVID supplies to the hospitals, and I knew he had some kind of a Briller Jeopardy question for you. It was just a matter of trying to find it.
You found it?
And I finally did find it, but that's till later.
Just want to show the radar down in Florida because they're inside that gyre that we've been describing that has Tropical Storm Cristobal, and the rains are not specifically from the tropical storm. Now a tropical depression, by the way, because it's well inland, but it's all part of the same mess that's down there. So you're seeing still some fairly steady rain covering much of central and south Florida. They've been getting waves of rain moving northward from Cuba and across the Florida Straits, and that's going to continue tonight and on Friday, and probably even into Saturday as well. WPC continues to show over the next 7 days, and this doesn't count any of the rain that they've had over the last 3 or 4 days or so, but we're looking at an additional 5 to 7 inches of rain from the central Gulf Coast east across the Florida Panhandle and then down the entire Florida Peninsula, and you can see the big 7 to 10 inch spike that's out in the ocean. That's obviously reflecting Cristobal, and then that heavy rain spreads up the Mississippi River into Arkansas and Missouri come Sunday and Monday once the storm moves inland.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead. You don't have
Do
to
you think,
ask me to ask a question. You could just ask the question.
I, do you think anyone who is retiring or has retired and has said, it's my dream to retire and leave this area, the New York area, and retire and go down to Florida, do you think any of the people who make that decision have any clue whatsoever of what they're expecting, or what all they know is that Florida is the quote sunshine state? Do you think they have any idea that from June through September and even October, this is the kind of weather they're going to get virtually every day?
Well, a lot
Every
of
day.
folks don't. There are people that just they come up here for the summer. Their family,
I
or wherever their family happens to be, and they come up
Well, if you
north for
happen to
the
be rich,
summer.
you can. If you happen to be rich and you can afford to have two homes, yeah, Florida's great in the winter, but in the to live down there through all of this, and I've been down in Florida in the hot months,
Yeah, the
July.
summer the summer months are tough. I lived in the Gulf Coast for 5 years, and you get, you know what, Joe, you do get used to. I've said this. You and I have had this conversation. Why do people live up in people that live up in the Dakotas, where it gets to 40 below, or folks that live in Alaska? Your body gets used to it. It just does. So what happens is the first time the temperature gets under 70, you got a sweater on.
Yeah,
That usually is how it works. But yeah,
yeah,
this time of year, it is tough. I mean, the sun is just absolutely blazing. It gets to 90 every day. You get a thunderstorm every day. But I will say this, and I will stand by this position. The humidity there, the tropical humidity in the Gulf Coast and over Florida, is a totally different a totally different experience than with the humidity that we get
oh,
up here. That's
absolutely,
actually, I can handle that, the Florida stuff and the Gulf Coast humidity stuff. Up here, it's different. It's different, and it's miserable. Okay, because there's
right,
almost most of the time there's no wind. At least down there, the wind is constantly blowing at 20 knots. So,
right.
which is good, dries your clothes when you hang them out on the line. Okay, so let's go to the models. Okay, let's go first to short range. I'm going to bring up the WRF ARW. Don't ask me what it means. I have no clue. So let's look at, maybe we can figure out. You mentioned the RPM. Maybe we could figure out which one of the, because these short range models are all in in it. So I'm kind of looking here, Joe, looking at right now, we're approaching 0Z, and the WRF has nothing in Western PA, absolutely nothing. So we know that's wrong. And going into tonight, it does actually have these fired up cells in Eastern PA, making it into Western New Jersey by about between 10 and 11 o'clock, and then they start to weaken as they approach New York City, and then they weaken some more, kind of reform a little bit, but more isolated. So I'm guessing that's not what it's not that one. Let's try the WRF ARW2, and this has even less. So this one actually has the thunderstorms in Western PA, but it doesn't have the cells in Eastern PA as much, and those just completely fall apart. So it's not that one. Maybe it's this one, the WRF NMN. Excuse me.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much, and I accept the blessing with humility and grace. Um, so, how about this one, Joe? This one looks like maybe it's this one because this one, the WRFNMN, holds these cells together and moves it right over New York. Moves a fairly strong cell over New York City and Western Long Island, and then eventually into southwestern Connecticut, and also over northern New Jersey, northern and central Jersey. So maybe it's that one.
Right. It might be. That's,
Although I'm looking at what it has for 8 o'clock tonight, and it's too far west. So, because the RPM, when you folks see that at home, if you're watching a television, your friendly local television station with that model, that actually is a compilation of all these different short range models. It just basically takes an average of them. So, the old saying is if you use averages, you're going to get average results. And I think that's how I'm looking at the RGEM, because we don't really look at the RGEM very often. And this only doesn't give you what the radar looks like. It gives you the precip. So you just have to kind of guess from this. Now, the RGEM's got it robust into eastern PA and western New Jersey to about New York City and the Hudson Valley around 2 a.m. And then it moves into Connecticut and falls apart. So look, there's support. There is support for that happening, and you certainly have to include it in the forecast unless you want to really be brave and leave it out. So yeah, these storms will probably get some cells between say 11 a.m. and 2 a.m. That works
Yeah,
for me.
the curious thing is that, you and I both agree on Saturday that there probably will be some pop-up thunderstorm or thunder shower activity in and around the area. But the Storm Prediction Center on Saturday has thunderstorm activity completely devoid of our area. It's all to our south. And I'm saying to myself, well, what are they
Well,
looking at the wind out
I mean,
looking
if
at?
they're betting on the dry line going by, much earlier in the day, but uh, listen, they may come back and have to. They may come back and have to do something tomorrow morning. We may see a whole totally different map. By the
I'm
way,
sure.
the GFS, for what it's worth, um, the GFS actually has what looks like a pretty fairly strong complex of storms over northern New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, and southwest Connecticut at 2 a.m. So the GFS is in support of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Then tomorrow looks like it fires up. It fires up some decent storms also tomorrow evening, Joe, from southeastern New England to New York City, northern New Jersey, and down into northeast Virginia. So I'm thinking maybe tomorrow they'll at the very least they'll extend that marginal risk area to the northeast. It would, there's nothing really that different for tomorrow than today. You're still dealing with these, weak shortwave. There's a trough that's moving along for tomorrow that's supportive, and and the GFS, by the way, for Saturday, I'm just going to draw the dry line here, but there's your front at once again 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If you look at the isobars, you'd put the front right on the coast, but then if you look where the showers are, there's probably some kind of secondary front behind it. That's the dry line, I'm thinking, and yeah,
Right.
right in here, this is where there might be some scattered showers and storms that develop, and the GFS actually weakens them as they move east. The NAM3 held on to them to an extent as they moved them to the southeast. You put it in the forecast.
I'm just looking at the Foose 61, the NAM Foose. This is for runoff of 18Z. And tomorrow they have lifted indices on the order of about -3, -2, -3. They still have actually by 2 o'clock on Saturday, the lifted index is -4. So you got
Hey,
those
those
lifted.
LIs, those lifted indexes were off the wall negative yesterday, and look what happened.
Yeah, exactly,
So
exactly.
I'm thinking they're going to have to expand the risk a little bit.
Hmm.
The tropical storm Cristobal. I haven't done this all week, but I just want to kind of take a look at the total accumulated precip of the GFS with this and see what it has. Now remember, this doesn't count for Florida and parts of the Gulf Coast where we've seen either continuous rain or showers and storms. Doesn't count what's fallen so far. The GFS looks like it basically has mostly between 3 and 5 inches of rain between now and early Tuesday, with the
Hmm.
heaviest rain staying out over the coastal waters. But sometimes it's hard. One of the things that the model is doing is, Joe, is I think this is because of the fact that there is going to be some increasing shear as it approaches the Louisiana coast. So the storm on this model, on the GFS anyway, and on a couple of others, it kind of weakens it a little bit in terms of the rainfall area going into Sunday morning along the Gulf Coast. It actually pushes most of the rain over the Florida Panhandle and into southern Georgia, and down into northern and central Florida. There's not that much that goes on west of where the low center goes inland. On this run, the GFS takes it uh, to about Boothville and actually brings the low into Lake Pontchartrain before it moves northwestward. The Europeans further west and brings it to the central Louisiana coast, which is where the Hurricane Center takes it.
Right.
Here's the let's get there. Here's their the Hurricane Center's forecast, Joe, has been almost. They really haven't changed very much in terms of the track. It's been uh, they've hardly moved it over the last 3 days, and I didn't see anything today that suggested that this track should be shifted in one direction or another. The GFS further east, the European further west, but that's they're close.
Just a little bit of a wobble to the north northwest just prior to landfall. It looks like.
So
Excuse me.
yeah, here's let me get the Atlantic region up so we could take the Western Atlantic, um, and I want to bring up. I'm going to bring up the wind shear. I also don't think, I know I've been burned before with storms in the Gulf of Mexico. I just think that the broad nature of the center of this is probably going to keep this from tightening up and becoming a hurricane. I mean, maybe it gets to 60 miles an hour on wind, maybe even 70 miles an hour. Wouldn't shock me. But I don't know if it's going to be able to take it down and become a hurricane. If it does, it would be a minimal hurricane. I can't imagine it would be anything more than that. There's, when you get up into the northern Gulf of Mexico, there's increasing wind shear, so the environment becomes less and less conducive as it moves further north. And then, of course,
Right.
once it's inland, it's done. But here we have it. If you watch it close, folks, you see the low that it prints out, that 98 low. Even though it's over land, the circulation is actually fairly intact and stays intact. And then it emerges off the Yucatan Peninsula late tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, and then it starts to strengthen and move northward because you've got the ridge off the east coast, and we talked about this yesterday. Still remains the case. You've got this strengthening upper high that is uh, uh, east of Cuba and over the Bahamas. You see it right here. Let me just draw it in for you. So there's your upper high right here, and there's also an upper high back through West Texas, and your tropical system is kind of sandwiched in the middle, and of course with that strengthening upper high to the east, and this upper high kind of building over the top over the next several days. The path of least resistance is northward, and then eventually, as higher pressures start to build in the Tennessee Valley and in the South, in the Carolinas, this thing starts to turn more northwest and heads up into Arkansas and Mississippi. And I don't think this is going to be any kind of problem here. It goes in too far west and gets swallowed up by that trough that's in the western part of the United States.
And it'll just be one big rainstorm as it continues northward from the Gulf Coast, straight on up through Arkansas and Missouri and into portions of Illinois. And, uh, they'll have their fair share of wetness. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, Joe, high pressure from eastern Canada will be building down and in across the much of the eastern and Atlantic seaboard. And we're going to be in fine shape, I think, weather-wise, right on through. As wet as it's going to be out in the nation's midsection, it's going to be quite dry here. It looks
Well,
like right on through Wednesday.
oh yeah, no question. I'll bring the U.S. map up. You got a big ridge that builds next week in the east. There's a big upper high.
Correct.
This trough that moves through Saturday, this upper trough, Saturday night, brings a shot of cool air. You've got a big ridge here that builds from New York State down into South Carolina, and the high initially being to our north is going to start things cool and relatively. It'll be seasonal Sunday and Monday, and then we'll probably warm up a bit later in the week. The other thing I wanted to point out, by the way, take a look, Joe, off the southeast coast. Okay, there's this big upper low that rotates back westward. You see how
Yeah,
it does that? It
yeah.
goes over Bermuda, and then it weakens as it turns northwestward and northward, and then eventually just gets swallowed up by that upper trough that drops down over the Great Lakes and into the east next weekend. But that when I saw that today, I looked at it. When you look at it on the surface map, maybe there's something subtropical in nature there. I don't know, but in terms of what it does on the surface, it's got a little closed surface low off the North Carolina coast. You can see it here. It's actually got it wrapped up a couple of isobars when it bursts on the scene when it's near Bermuda, and then it gradually weakens as it heads toward the Carolina coast, and then, as we said, it just gets swallowed up. But kind of interesting that here we are at the beginning of June, and everything in the tropics wants to spin. It's only a matter of time before the Canadian spins up its first Category 5 hurricane. You realize that, right?
Well, as I said a couple of days ago, we were talking about the speed of these thunderstorms that we had a couple of days ago with the derecho. All you need is a modest hurricane. If you can somehow manage to have it catch, those westerlies, and make the forward speed on the order of 40 or 50 miles an hour, even a modest tropical cyclone could become the equivalent of a Cat 3 or Cat 4. I think that's probably what happened with the so-called Long Island Express, the hurricane of 1938 that crashed into Long Island and created Shinnecock Inlet, by the way.
Yep. You get a deep enough trough, it'll just race up like a rocket ship. By the way, take a look up in the northern Rockies. By the time we get to over the weekend, a little bit of snow there in parts of Idaho and Oregon, northern Nevada, northeastern California, western Montana, going into Monday evening. And meanwhile, the remnant low of Cristobal runs northward up just to the west of the Mississippi River. The GFS has it passing close to St. Louis, so look, there's probably going to be some showers and storms and some heavy rains up and down the Mississippi Valley. But eventually, that low wraps up and heads up into the west, into the Great Lakes, runs up toward James Bay, and we get a little bit of a cold front that whether it holds together or not remains to be seen, but it looks like it wants to weaken the front as it moves eastward. The GFS would argue that we could have a dry week. The whole week may wind up being rain-free. Not
Well, the
impossible.
next chance of any showers might be next Thursday, late Thursday. At least that's what I.
That would be the earliest. And then, of course,
Yeah.
if there's going to be another, if they have a strong upper trough swinging through the Great Lakes, maybe next Saturday there might be some showers and storms to deal with that trough. Maybe those will be of the strong to severe type, but that's down the road. And there's another cool high that comes down behind it. I'll be happy if we don't wind. I said, Scott Briller asked me how many 90-degree days I thought, and I gave the number. I said 12. I don't know because I got last year on the nose at 15. Number of 90-degree days in New York City, so I'm going 12, and none for the month of June.
Well, we'll see. Speaking of tomorrow, what do you think the high temperature will be? Let's say in New York and environs tomorrow.
I was thinking mid to upper 80s. What's going to stop it?
Tomorrow?
Yeah,
You going that high, mid to upper
you
80s?
think it's too high?
Well, I went for just a flat out cloudy day, and I kept temperatures in the lower Hudson Valley in the low to mid 70s, and I said, well, I don't even think it might even if it hits 80 in New York, that might be
Hmm.
lucky. I guess you think that you might have some sunshine tomorrow to work with, right?
Yeah,
Or
that's what I thought.
I was thinking it's going to be more or less a drab, rather cloud-filled sky for much of the day tomorrow. But we'll see.
No onshore flow. It's not like we have a backdoor front coming through.
Yeah, but still,
Well, we'll see what happens. See, we don't
yeah,
always agree.
that's right.
We don't
Yeah,
always agree.
right.
All right, so
As
we're
Barney
back.
said, as Barney said to Fred just before Fred won the golf cup, Barney said, "Of course, you know, if I were playing you, I'd beat your brains out."
Yeah. By the way, before we get to, while I load my Briller Jeopardy question, let me point out, they started, they're back to season 1 on Perry Mason on MeTV in the morning. And I saw last night The Case of the Moth-Eaten Mink. And I have to tell you, that is one of the best Perry Mason episodes that was done. It has a very film noir feel to it. I mean, Perry Mason has a tendency to be on a bit on the dark side, but in that particular episode, I just felt like I was sitting through a film noir style Fritz Lang movie. It was very well done. And there's a cop killing in it. Ray Collins should have been nominated for an Emmy for his performance in that, playing Lieutenant Tragg.
Now, the thing is with that particular episode, I saw the last few minutes of it. That was one of the ones without Hamilton Berger.
Yes, Berger was not in that episode.
Oh, so it was not during that time frame.
No. That wasn't into that. No, they didn't even have they weren't even in. Oh, they had a no. Hang on. Berger was in this episode, the episode last night. The
Really?
time, yes, there was the time they spent in court. Usually the whole second half of the show is in court,
Right.
but the part in court was small. No, there was the trial part. He was in there because Perry had to ask for
The continuance?
a continuance for an hour, a recess for an hour.
Because I didn't see his name. I didn't see his name on the list of credits at the end of the show. I mean, I looked
Really?
at it. I said, "What happened to Hamilton Berger?" I said, "Oh, this may be the one of the episodes where he wasn't there." But
No. He was in the episode. He was definitely in the episode last night. He just
okay,
didn't. I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't stay for the whole credits, but I'll go back and look to
I
see if
stayed.
it.
I stayed at the end because the Twilight Zone episode last night was one of my very favorite episodes. A game of pool with
Oh yes, yes.
Jonathan Winters playing up against Oscar Madison, or in his name in the episode was I think Jesse Carter.
Right.
I think that was one of that. I think that was the only episode Jonathan Winters, who was always like a comedian, a comic or whatever.
Where he was in a dramatic role.
He did a dramatic role. And I think he actually talked about it in an interview. It was the only time he ever played a dramatic, and he played a great dramatic role.
Mm-hmm.
That's Brown.
Yeah. All right, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Question 1. Can you please name Popeye's 4 nephews?
Oh, was it Pip-Eye, Poop-Eye, Peep-Eye, and Pup-Eye?
You got them all 4.
All 4 of them.
Yep.
You can see what kind of a childhood I had.
And Walt Disney's favorite character.
Walt Disney's favorite character?
Yes.
Well, I know he did the voice of Mickey for a while, but I don't think that was his favorite character. I'm going to say, well, gosh, I think I'm going to say Goofy.
And I think I'm going to say you are correct.
Really?
Yeah, you nailed both of them tonight.
Wow.
So,
did I ask you this Briller question? Thought I dropped a Briller Jeopardy for Mr. Chaffee. June 3rd, which was yesterday. That's why I'm saying, did I ask you this? Is famous for 2 weather-related topics that happen on this date, June 3rd, in Central Park. Here are your 2 hints. One has to do with the temperature. One has to do with precipitation.
all right. So, okay. So for temperature, it's either going to be the all-time I'm going to say the all-time record low for June.
Okay.
Was on June 3rd.
June 3rd
For the
is
month of June.
right. Answer: June 3rd is the average date of first low in the 70s.
The average date for the first low in the 70s.
That's what he says. The first low in the 70s? I don't understand that. Mr.
Also,
Briller's
like the
not.
normal low is 70?
No, it can't
No,
be.
it can't be.
It can't be.
No, it can't be.
First low in the 70s. I don't know. June 3rd is also the date when there has been more measured precipitation than any other calendar day.
Really? Oh my God! Sal Blandino was carping about the fact to me on YouTube that if it rains on June 10th, apparently it'll be the third year in a row that it will have rained on June 10th.
Is that his birthday?
It's
Is that
like,
why?
I don't know. I have no idea. He didn't say. He just for some reason was focused on June 10th. I can't even remember what time I had lunch or went to the bathroom today, let alone the fact that it's rained, for the last three June 10ths. I mean, who remembers all this stuff? Seriously?
Sal Blandino does.
Oh, bless his heart. Pamela Gasper, thank you for the. Oh, that's because I sneezed. I was wondering why she said bless you. I forgot that I sneezed at the beginning of the show.
Right.
See, if I sneeze too hard and half my brains go out. Um, by the way, big hellos to everybody. Didn't say hello to everybody on board tonight. It's nice to see everybody here and a pretty nice crowd tonight for a day in early June. With this time of year, usually the live stream audience size is not like it is in the wintertime. It picks up when the hurricane season really gets revving up. So
No,
just
but
want
we have a tight group.
Yes, and I just want to give a big thank you to the tight group. And let me also, um, I'm just going to put it up. If you're not part of the Discord chat, here is here's the link to get you there.
And Joe,
Hang on one second.
We ought to think about this seriously. I mean, as I said, we have a tight group. We have, according to my monitor here, we have 53 people watching now.
Right.
But we ought to figure out a way to get all of us together. Maybe at some dining. I mean, it's not right now.
When everything settles down, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like some restaurant or maybe meet at a park somewhere or whatever, and just have the Joe and Joe weather crew all meet and shake hands.
We could do that.
Hi to everybody.
We certainly could do that. We'll just have to figure it out when all of this settles down.
We'll meet at Johnny Quest's house.
Yes, in North, right. We'll take a drive down 81. Works for me. I put up a link there on Discord, folks. That's basically a nonstop weather chat involving this channel, and it's absolutely free. So if you haven't joined the Discord group, jump on it because after the live streams are over, conversations continue. You guys can share maps, videos, whatever you'd like. So the link is up there. By all means, become part of the crowd if you aren't already. Frank Riccio lamenting that 2009 was the worst year for his vegetable crop because it rained 29 out of 30 days in June, and his crops drowned.
Good Lord, his victory garden.
Timothy Veltman wants to call it the Joe and Joe potluck supper picnic.
Call it whatever you like. I think I'd be, once we move into maybe, was it phase 3 or phase 4, where your Governor or whatever, and something like this is allowed. Although, will it be allowed? Will social distancing? We'd all have to stand 6 feet from each other while we.
I guess I don't know. I think everybody is so weary at this point with everything that's been going on.
We won't know the repercussions of all of these demonstrations for about another week or 10 days as to whether or not everything starts going up again or.
Well, look, what we do know is that states like Georgia and Texas opened up a few weeks ago, and also South Carolina and a few others. And from what we've been hearing seeing with regards to, for example, in South Carolina, shopping mall volume has gone back to about 80% of what it was before this all started. So, I mean, people down south are, they're basically living their lives. There hasn't been any kind of serious spike in the last couple of weeks there. My suspicion is, I'm just going to guess, that you'll probably maybe have a couple of small hotspots that develop in some of the really dense populated areas. But, for other places, when you move away from the dense population centers, I honestly don't think that there's going to be, you're probably not going to see. I hope I'm right, but that you're not going to see huge spikes in a couple of weeks. It's my guess.
All
But
right. Well, we'll see. Hopefully
yeah,
nothing will spike or whatever. Well,
yeah.
and
Now whether it comes back in the fall, I'll tell you something because I watch. I watch CNBC every day, and uh, one of the people that I've been following through all of this is Dr. Scott Gottlieb, who's he's a former head of the FDA, and he is really from start to finish. He's on every single day, and they have very long discussions with him about what's been happening, the state of drug research, of vaccines, and so on. He has been spot on with everything he has said. He just kind of takes a step back, uh, very clinical data, real data driven info that's not politically driven. He's very good to make that very clear that his answers have nothing to do with politics, and he's been spot on. And he says his concern is not so much what's going on now, but in the fall that maybe that there'll be some kind of a flare up in the fall, just like there usually is when you get into September, October, and the flu starts coming back and that kind of thing. So he's not overly, from what the last time I saw him yesterday, just kind of saying how maybe there'll be sort of like when a fire goes when a fire winds down in a fire pit, you have still embers, you know, uh, going on in some places. So you'll probably have a few hot spots here and there, and throughout the summer. And then we wait to the fall when there may or may not be, where there may be, some kind of a bigger flare up to worry about. So we'll
yeah,
see.
we'll see.
All right. So you have a good night, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. Robert Russo, thanks for hitting Super Chat. Joe and I really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow at the usual time, 7 o'clock Eastern. And I'm thinking, well, maybe we'll do one Saturday around midday with the tropical storm. Does that work for you?
I
Or you
my
got
wife
stuff to
hasn't.
do?
Well, my wife hasn't written up my schedule yet. I don't know
Okay.
what it
Well,
means
once
yet.
you know your
Like
schedule.
yesterday, for example, I was putting down mulch.
All right. Well, you know what? She
That's,
keeps you busy. It's better than vegetating in the house and twirling your thumbs all day.
that's. Oh, you mean like this? That kind of thing? Can I do that?
I mean,
You know,
how did we do that?
I don't have my spoon down here. I have my spoon. I walk around the house with the spoon like this. You know why, right?
No.
I'm stir crazy.
Oh, good God. You have a wooden spoon, don't you? As an
Well,
Italian, you have to have a wooden spoon.
yes, I
Okay.
do have a wooden. You want to see my wooden spoon? Did you think I didn't have a
Why
wooden
did you
spoon?
have a Why do you have a wooden spoon in your office?
All right,
Oh, it's a
this
lucky spoon.
it's my lucky. It's my all right. Very yeah, lucky spoon. 2000. This is 2019. In 1969, and I was a big Met fan back then, and my grandmother was a big Met fan. And one of the things in our house, because I lived with my grandparents, was the wooden spoon. That was the,
Right.
if
That
you
was the discipline.
whatever, yeah, like that.
We had one of
And
those.
that day, when the Mets won the World Series, they beat the Baltimore Orioles. My grandmother took the wooden spoon, her big spaghetti pot, and stood on the porch waiting for me to come home from school, and she banged the pot. She banged the pot so hard that she broke the wooden spoon. That was like the emancipation. It was like, the wooden spoon is broken, like that. But then 31 years later, when the Mets played St. Louis and won the pennant in the year 2000, I went with my sister. I surprised my sister by opening up the trunk of our car, pulled out a big bottle of champagne, pulled out the spaghetti pot, my grandmother's spaghetti pot, and another wooden spoon. And in her honor, I banged the wooden spoon on the pot in the
Oh, very
parking lot of
good.
the stadium. And ever since that time, my sister every Christmas sends me or gives me as a Christmas present a wooden spoon. She says, "This is the year. This is the year we're going to win. This is the year," and calls it the lucky spoon. I just didn't happen to do what I
So
usually do.
you've gotten a wooden spoon every year for the last 40 years, 50
I've
years, or
got
whatever
no
it
for
was.
the last 20 years.
20 years. So you have
Right.
20 wooden spoons.
Well, I don't because since the Mets most years don't win the pennant or don't win the World Series, I've broken the spoon and sent it back to my sister and said,
Oh,
"That's my last year."
okay. I got
But
you.
I didn't do it this year or with last year's spoon. But when you said wooden spoon, there you go. So I have it.
Okay. All right. And by the way, Scott Briller sent me a message. He said the June 3rd is the average date for the first low temperature that's above 70 in Central Park. That's the average date that
Average.
a 70-degree
Okay.
low occurs for the first time.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what
Only
that
Scott
was.
only Scott Briller would know that.
Yeah.
That's why he had stumped us both.
Exactly. All right. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow. And everybody have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night,
Good night.
everybody. Oh,
Now the reason I was late
hold on,
tonight.
hold on, hold on, hold on.